Morning Year 4. This is our fourth lesson of the week on fractions, and yesterday we were learning all about what tenths are, and today we're going to be counting in tenths. So by the end of the lesson we will know that a tenth is made by dividing something by 10. We will be able to represent tenths in different ways, describe tenths in words and fractions, and count up and down in tenths. So for now, please can you pause the video and write today's date and learning objective, which is to count in tenths. To get our brains working, have a look at the different representations shown on the slide and see if you can write a fraction to go with each one of those pictures. Be careful because the one at the bottom with the pencils, you will need to write 3 different fractions. I'd like to know the fraction for yellow pencils, the fraction for red pencils, and the fraction for green pencils. Pause the video and have a go at that now, please. And here are the answers. So you should have 10 as the denominator for all of those different representations because each of those things are split into 10 equal pieces. And remember, the numerator, the top number, shows us how many of those pieces are shaded. Or for the pencils, 2 of those 10 pencils are yellow, 3 tenths are green, and 5 out of 10, or 5 tenths, are red. If we have a look at this counting stick, and we're going to count together between 0 and 1. So the counting stick has been divided into 10 equal pieces. Going from 0, we're going to count forwards in tenths. So count with me. 0, 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths, and just pause there for a moment. Now, for our next number, we could say 10 tenths. And what that means is 10 out of 10 pieces, so all of the pieces. So we can see that 10 tenths is the same as 1 whole 1. So 1 whole chocolate bar, 1 whole pizza. So if the numerator and the denominator are the same number, it will always equal 1. I wonder if you can identify these fractions on the counting stick. Imagine that 0 is on one end of the counting stick and 1 is on the other end. You can see that the counting stick has been divided into 10 equal pieces. So what fraction is A pointing to? Well done, it is 2 tenths. And what fraction is B pointing to? It's pointing to 8 tenths. Now let's see if we can count together between 2 tenths and 8 tenths. 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths. Well done. I wonder if we can count backwards in tenths. So if we started at 5 tenths and we counted back 3 tenths, where do you think you would stop? Pause the video and have a little think about that, and we'll go through it together in a moment. So on our counting stick, if we start at 5 tenths, so I would just put a circle around 5 tenths here, and we count back 3 tenths. So we're going to jump backwards 3 tenths, 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. So we actually end on 2/10. Well done if you got that right. Now, have a look at this one. We've got our counting stick and it goes all the way from 0 to 1. So if we were counting up 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10, which equals 1, what would the next number, the next fraction be? I wonder if you can pause the video and see if you can write it in two different ways. If we count together again, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10, our next fraction would be 11/10. But we could also write it in a different way because we know that 10/10 equal to 1, a whole one. So we could also write it as 1 and 1/10, like this. So we could have 11/10 or 1, as in one whole one, and an extra 1/10. They mean exactly the same. If you look at these diagrams, each of these is showing 1/10. So what is the total fraction that is shown below? So we've got 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. What's the answer, year 4? Well done, it is 4/10. So now it's your turn to have a go at some fluency questions. What I would do is I would draw yourself out a counting stick that goes between 0 and 1 and do 10 equally spaced markers along that number line. And when you've done that, work out what the arrows are pointing to. Choose your challenge and have a go at that. And when you've finished, you can move on to activity 2. It says copy and complete the table. So if we look at the yellow chili challenge one for activity 2, it starts off with a representation. And you will see that 1 out of those 10 boxes have been coloured in. So we've got the representation drawn there, the model. In words, that would be 1/10. And then you would need to write the fraction in numbers. So you'd have 1 on the top, the numerator, and 10 on the bottom for the denominator. Then it says continue the pattern until you get to 5/10. So even though it's only got 3 rows on this, you would need to continue until you get to 5/10. And it's the same for activity 2 for the green chili challenge and the red extra hot challenge. For the red extra hot challenge, watch out because you have to go up to 13/10, which means that you need more than 1 whole. Good luck, pause the video now and have a go at the fluency. So you can mark your work now. So pause the video while you do that. Well done. Remember, if you don't get any answers correct, you can always track back, have a look which ones you got wrong, maybe talk it through with an adult, and see whether you can correct them. It's worth noting for the red chili challenge, where it says fraction and it says 11/10, you could write 11/10 or you could write 1 and 1/10. For 12/10, you could write 1 and 2/10. For 13/10, you could write 1 and 3/10. But either way that you write it, it doesn't matter. It means the same thing. Let's have a look at some reasoning together. So I've put a counting stick at the top here just to help you, and you can see it goes from 0 to 1. So the boy says, I started at 2/10 and counted on 5/10. So you will need to work out where to start, 2/10, and then do 5 jumps along the number line, and you end up on 7/10. The girl says, I start at 8/10 and count backwards 3/10. The boy says, I start at 4/10, I count forwards 5/10, and then I count backwards 3/10. Have a little go at those. Pause the video now. So, where the girl says she starts at 8/10 and counts backwards 3/10, so she does 3 jumps backwards, she should end up on 5/10. And the boy at the bottom says, I started at 4/10 and I count forwards 5/10, which takes you to 9/10, and then backwards 3/10, which takes you to 6/10. Remember, that's written 6 as the numerator and 10 as the denominator. Have a go at some reasoning on your own. So choose your level of challenge. You need to read the statements and say whether they are correct, whether they're right or not, and then prove it. So remember, reasoning is where we say what we think and then we say why we think that. We try and prove whether they're right or wrong. So you could prove it with a diagram or a drawing. Pause the video and have a go at reasoning now. Now you can mark your reasoning. I wonder whether you proved it with a number line. I wonder whether you proved it with a drawing. I wonder whether you just proved it with words. Pause the video now and have a look at the reasoning answers. And here are some problem solving, and you might want to draw yourself a number line like we've been doing, going from 0 to 1 with tenths marked out for each part of the number line, and they've got to be equally spaced. And then you read the clues to work out the fraction. So for example, for the yellow challenge, I start on 1/10, I count forwards 2/10, and then count forwards another 2/10. So try and find out what fraction you end on. If you want to really push yourself, have a look at the red chili challenge, and you need to use the clues to work out the fraction that you start with, not that you end on. So read the question carefully. Here's a little clue. You might need to use the inverse, the opposite, to work out the answer. Pause the video so that you can work through the problem solving now. Here are the answers for the problem solving. So 5/10 for the yellow chili, 6/10 for the green chili, and 7/10 for the red chili. Well done if you got those right. So here's a bit of an additional challenge, and it's about King Arthur today. So King Arthur's thinking of a fraction. This is what he's thinking. His fraction is more than 1, but less than 2. Somewhere in between. His fraction has an odd number as the numerator. What could King Arthur's fraction be? You've got to list all of the possible fractions that it could be. Remember, we've been learning about tenths today, so your denominator will be tenths. See if you can represent your answers in creative ways. Good luck, Year 4, and I'll see you tomorrow.